Hey everyone, it's Alexander Robinson. Welcome to the channel and welcome to another double feature movie review. So last month, on Memorial Day weekend, Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning came out the same weekend as Lilo and Stitch. I saw the former at the Cannes Film Festival and reviewed that early, but I never got around to reviewing Lilo and Stitch. I actually did see the movie the weekend it came out, but because at that time I was still fighting off jet lag, I just did not have the energy to review Lilo and Stitch. I actually tried to review this movie as soon as I could, but as the days went on, I thought, you know what? The live-action How to Train Your Dragon is coming out soon, and both of these are remakes of animated movies directed by Chris Sanders and Dean DeBlois. So I thought, you know what? I'll just do a double feature movie review like I did for Venom: The Last Dance and Kraven the Hunter. So for those of you who've been asking me, where's my Lilo and Stitch review? Where's my Lilo and Stitch review? Here it is now, and it's tied to the review of How to Train Your Dragon, which I actually think is a good pairing because not only are these remakes of animated movies from the same directors, but they're very different in their own way. And I'll go into that in a little more detail when I talk about How to Train Your Dragon. But first, let's talk about Lilo and Stitch, which is directed by Dean Fleischer Camp, the same director of Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. And it basically follows the same plot as the animated movie. An alien creature dubbed Experiment 626 escapes custody of the Galactic Federation, crash lands on Earth, and ends up being the pet to two sisters, Lilo and Nani. And the alien, which is later named Stitch, is being hunted down by his creator, Dr. Jumba. Out of the two Disney live-action remakes that came out this year, Snow White and Lilo and Stitch, this is the one that everyone was looking forward to because within my generation, people grew up with Lilo and Stitch. It's the first of the Disney animated movies of the post-Renaissance to get a live-action adaptation. And people were mainly excited for it because of Stitch. And Stitch is cute. At points, that's probably the biggest compliment that I could give this movie, is that Stitch translates well into live action. There are some things about him that are modified in terms of his design, but overall, he works well in live action. I'll talk about later why he's cute at points. But another thing that I thought worked about this movie was the sister relationship between Lilo and Nani. Maia Kealoha plays Lilo, and Sydney Elizebeth Agudong, I hope I pronounced that correctly, plays Nani, and both of these actors work well together. There are points where their sister relationship is actually somewhat believable. I think the best scene in the movie where they really showcase the strength of their relationship is when they're in the hammock. It's right before Lilo's about to be sent away when everything goes downhill, and it was a really heartfelt scene. But everything else about this movie is just soulless. That's the best way to sum up Lilo and Stitch. This movie is as soulless as can be, considering that the original source material and the story has so much heart to it. I've read a lot of reviews and heard people say that this is one of the better Disney live-action remakes. And while it's certainly not the worst, Pinocchio, I don't see this as anywhere near the level of The Jungle Book or even Guy Ritchie's Aladdin, which I'll admit is a guilty pleasure, but I enjoy that movie. Now, one thing I try to actively avoid with these reviews is be a condescending asshole. I don't like talking down to other people because their opinion doesn't align with mine, because movies are subjective. You like what you like, and that's totally fine. But let's be honest with ourselves. The only reason this movie is making as much money as it is, and the reason audiences are really loving this movie, is because of Stitch. It's not the movie itself, it's because of Stitch. Stitch, I feel like, is the Disney equivalent to the Minions, except there's only one, and he's more cute than annoying. But like the Minions, Stitch has pretty much hijacked this franchise and has become the face of it. The reason this movie is close to hitting $1 billion is because people really love Stitch. They love his antics, and they're willing to forgive every other flaw with this movie that makes it as bad as it is. The reason I say Stitch is cute at points is because he's more monstrous than Stitch in the animated film. Chris Sanders still voices the character, and the voice still very much works, but there are more scenes in this movie where he is just causing chaos. At a certain point, you're like, screw Stitch. Like, throw him into the ocean, because he is just monstrous to the point where it's not even fun. In a way, it comes across as more mean-spirited than anything. You're just watching this alien cause all sorts of chaos, causing problems for everyone, and continues to do it throughout the whole movie, to the point where when you get to the end of the movie, in the finale, you don't buy into the fact that he's more calm or that he's learned anything. He's just still a monster. And speaking of monster, and speaking of mean-spiritedness, this movie has gotten a lot of flack for getting rid of the original film's antagonist, Captain Gantu. And that issue didn't really cross my mind, because in Lilo and Stitch, he doesn't appear in it a whole lot. He's mainly there as a force that needs to be dealt with. That's it. But considering who ended up being the villain of this movie, and spoilers for Lilo and Stitch if you haven't seen it, it's insulting. They make Jumba the villain of the film, and it comes out of nowhere. Sure, he and Pleakley were an antagonistic force in the animated movie because they were trying to capture Stitch and bring him back to the Galactic Federation. I get that, but they weren't straight up villains. They were just kind of the incompetent henchmen sent to do the villain's dirty work. Making Jumba the main villain of this movie is nonsensical, but it also comes out of nowhere. There is no legit setup to him being the film's primary antagonist, and when the big reveal happens that he's the main villain, he is a straight up psychopath. When he captures Stitch in Lilo's house, he decides to just destroy the whole house for no reason at all, and it plays into the mean-spirited nature of this movie that makes it unpleasant to watch. Like, this might not be the worst of the Disney live-action movies, but this is certainly the most mean-spirited of the live-action remakes, next to Pinocchio. Another thing I have to mention about Jumba, Pleakley, and all the other aliens in the Galactic Federation is they all look terrible. Their designs work well in an animated format, a 2D animated format. They do not translate well into live-action, or at least photorealistic CGI, which is why you have the real actors playing Jumba and Pleakley, Zach Galifianakis and Billy Magnussen, playing these characters in human disguises. Pleakley doesn't cross-dress like he did in the original, which boo, and Zach Galifianakis' voice does not work for Jumba at all. That Russian accent is iconic for the character, and for Jumba to just sound like a regular dude is... It doesn't work on so many levels. Another thing that doesn't work about the movie is the ending. We all know that Lilo and Stitch has its big message at the end, where Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind or forgotten. That's an integral part to the story of Lilo and Stitch. And this movie has that big scene as well, where Stitch is about to be taken away, but he tells the Grand Councilwoman, Ohana means family. This is my family. It's little and broken, but it's good. Yeah, still good. And not only is that moment used for Stitch to stay on Earth with Lilo and Nani, but it's also used to keep Nani from having Lilo taken away from her, because it proves that, yeah, Nani is a good surrogate mother to Lilo, and is willing to do whatever it takes to take care of her. So that whole scene plays out, but throughout the entire movie, there's a subplot where Nani wanted to try to go to UC San Diego to study marine biology. She can't do that because of what happened with her parents, so she has to put all that aside and take care of Lilo. The movie ends with her just going off to UC San Diego and leaving Lilo in the care of her neighbor. So the one thing that this movie is trying to convey, the one theme of the film, that family is incredibly important and nobody should be left behind, is tossed out. It doesn't work. It so does not work. When I first saw the movie, it didn't really occur to me, because I'm like, well, Nani's going off to college, she'll be back to take care of Lilo once she's all done. But then as time went on, I thought, no, the whole point of the movie was for Nani to not lose custody of Lilo. At the point when the social worker decides that Nani can't take care of Lilo, so she has to go live with their neighbor, like, that's the whole thing that needs to be prevented by the end of the movie, and then it just happens. I can't. I just can't with this movie. When I first saw this movie, I walked out of it thinking, yeah, it's just another uninspired Disney remake. It's gonna make a shit ton of money because people love Stitch. But the more I really sat on this movie, and the more that I think about the things that it did differently, the more angry I got. Yeah, this movie is going to end up on my bottom 10 list. Much like with Disney's Snow White earlier this year, this is just an uninspired remake, except this movie completely betrays the themes that the original animated movie had. So I say don't waste your money at all. The only reason I'm not telling it to burn in hell is because there were a few moments in the movie that I found amusing with Stitch. I think the sister relationship works at points, and I thought Sydney Elizebeth Agudong actually was good. Like, she had some charming moments throughout the movie, and honestly, I thought she carried it more than Stitch himself did. But still, I would not recommend this movie at all. If you adore Lilo and Stitch, but you haven't seen this movie yet, do not, I repeat, do not watch this new movie because it basically has no understanding of why that original film is so beloved. Alright, so that's my review for Lilo and Stitch. Now I can finally talk about the other live-action adaptation of a Chris Sanders, Dean DeBlois movie. But before I do, I need to have a change of shirts, so give me 1 second. Alright, so change of shirts. Now let's talk about the live-action remake of How to Train Your Dragon. This is directed and written by Dean DeBlois, the co-director of the first movie and who would take on the rest of the franchise going forward. Given that it's a remake of the animated movie, it follows the same plot, which I'm not going to go into because I just recently did a retro review for the original film, so you can go check out that if you want a plot summary for this one. But How to Train Your Dragon, more than Lilo and Stitch and more than Snow White, was the movie that I was dreading because it was DreamWorks finally getting into the ring with their live-action remakes. And it's interesting that they decided to go for a movie that came out 15 years ago and the same month as the movie that started this trend of remaking animated movies into live action. Not to get off topic, but I think it's funny that the movie that DreamWorks lands on as their first live-action remake came out the same month as Alice in Wonderland, in the same year. So in regards to this movie, when I saw the trailers for it, I kept thinking of Gus Van Sant's Psycho. I kept thinking about 2019's The Lion King and kept wondering, why? Why are we remaking this classic movie shot for shot? It felt so disheartening that DreamWorks finally decided to cave in and do a live-action remake of a movie that is considered to be one of their best. The original How to Train Your Dragon is in my top 100 favorite movies of all time, but people who have seen the movie earlier than I did say that, yeah, it's really good, but it is a shot-for-shot remake. So at a certain point, I just went, well, there's no getting around it being a shot-for-shot remake, so I might as well just go into it and accept it for what it is, or at least try to. And much to my surprise, I actually found myself liking this movie. It's not as good as the animated movies, not by a long shot, and I'll talk about that a little later, but in terms of translating the animated film and the world into live action, this movie does it better than any of the Disney live-action remakes. The reason for that is because the movie feels real. There are a lot of practical sets throughout this film. It doesn't feel like it was shot in front of a green screen the entire time. It's not overly CG heavy. There's a lot of CG, don't get me wrong, but the sets are real. There's a lot of real explosions, pyrotechnics, so it feels more believable that this world can exist. I mean, technically it does exist, but I'm not gonna nerd out on theme park stuff right now. It's also shot beautifully. Bill Pope is the cinematographer on this movie, and this is the same DP that did The Matrix, Spider-Man 2, and Shang-Chi, and his cinematography is just breathtaking. All these sweeping shots of these practical sets, real locations, and how he films the flying sequences. It's just as good as in the animated film. Some of the cast is pretty good as well. Mason Thames plays Hiccup, and look-wise, he seems to resemble the Hiccup from the sequels more than from the original movie, but he still manages to capture the awkward persona that Hiccup is supposed to have, and that sense of uncertainty about himself and what he's capable of. Is he really this dragon slayer that he wants to be? Or is that just not him? He does a really good job. Nick Frost actually makes for a great gobber, and funny enough, he's not as funny as in the animated movie. Craig Ferguson's gobber was definitely more the comic relief when it came to the human characters. Nick Frost isn't that this time around. He's weird, sure, but he plays the role a little more seriously. Now, as for Gerard Butler, he's the only actor to come back from the animated movies, once again playing Stoic the Vast. And I've talked about how I'm not a big fan of his career. I just think he makes so many mediocre action movies, and he's just so bland that his best role is voicing a Viking in an animated movie. So now he finally gets to take his best role and play it for real. And he's actually good. There are a few moments where he kind of growls his lines, and it made me think of Jeff Bridges from True Grit, where he's a little over the top, more over the top in live action than he is in animated form, ironically. But the moments between him and Hiccup feel just as authentic as in the animated movie. And the two emotional high points of the movie, when he says, "You're not my son," and then later on when he says, "I am proud to call you my son," those moments actually work. And speaking of those two moments, that actually leads into why this movie is the polar opposite of something like Lilo and Stitch. This movie keeps the themes of the original animated movie, the father and son relationship, the theme of trying to find your own voice and persona, and the theme of that the younger generation is better to lead with new ideas rather than the old guard with tradition. All of that is kept in this version of How to Train Your Dragon, and it makes the movie feel that much more impactful. You feel those moments even though you already know what's coming because you've seen the original. At least I'm going to assume you've seen the original. If you haven't, I don't know what you're doing right now. Go watch it. Go. Another thing that this movie does better than Lilo and Stitch is the CGI. All the alien creatures in Lilo and Stitch not only look terrible, but their designs were made for an animated setting, not for a photorealistic one. That's not the case with How to Train Your Dragon. Now, Toothless doesn't look any different than he did in animated form, and the design of Toothless already, much like with Stitch, works perfectly in live action. But the other dragons are modified in a way to where, yeah, these things could actually exist in real life. And not only do they look really cool, but they also took away a lot of the cartoony elements of these dragons while keeping a lot of personality within them. You still feel a lot for these dragons and know what they're thinking, but in the way that you would with any animal in the real world. So this movie does a really good job at translating the original movie into live action to where this could possibly be the best live action remake out there. But it's not perfect. Obviously, there is the fact that this is a shot-for-shot remake of the animated movie. Because of that, there are really no surprises. There are certain scenes that don't impact you as much as in the animated movie. Like, I don't think the flying sequence with Hiccup, Astrid, and Toothless is as powerful here as it is in the animated movie. And there's another reason for that, which I'll get into later. But also the big reveal that Hiccup loses his leg. That was such a big, whoa, I didn't see that coming moment in the animated movie, whereas this one you're like, all right, let's see the reveal, because you know what's coming. And I get it, this is a remake, so it has to stick to the original story, but it could have relied less on copying moments from the original in terms of the way they looked. Some of the best remakes out there stick to the core of the story, but have moments that make them stand out from the original. Like the best remakes I can think of are The Magnificent Seven, John Carpenter's The Thing, and Peter Jackson's King Kong. All those movies stick to the original story, but have moments in them that make them stand out. This movie doesn't have that, no matter how well it does at translating the world into live action. Now, if there's something in this movie that I can actually pinpoint as being a negative, it's Nico Parker as Astrid. And let me first say this. She's gotten a lot of flack for being cast as Astrid, and the only reasons I could seem to find is that her hair doesn't look like Astrid's, and she lacks the blue eyes that Astrid has. And all I gotta say to that is, y'all are some pathetic losers if those are your criticisms for Nico Parker being cast in this role. And I gotta give Nico Parker credit because when she was asked about those criticisms, she was just like, I don't care. And you know what? Good for her. The fact that she doesn't have one care in the world about these stupid criticisms is a point to her. That being said, she is terrible in this movie. She might not have the blonde hair and blue eyes, but whatever, I don't care about that. My problem with Nico Parker in this movie is that she does not capture the spirit that Astrid is supposed to have in the original films. Astrid is a tough, Viking warrior. She's independent, and she doesn't really take anyone's shit. And Nico Parker throughout this entire movie has a blank expression, a monotone voice, and she reacts to certain situations that no other human being should react to. When she first sees Toothless, she's supposed to be terrified because the Night Fury is supposed to be the most dangerous dragon in the world. No one has lived to tell the tale. And yet when she's staring down Toothless in this movie for the first time, she has no reaction to him at all. And then the big finale, when Astrid is free-falling, she's not screaming at all. She should be fearing for her life regardless of how tough of a Viking she is, right before Toothless catches her. That doesn't happen in this movie. And then the reason I said the flying sequence with her and Hiccup doesn't work like it does in the animated movie is because she just doesn't seem all that impressed by the end of it. In the animated movie, when Hiccup basically shows what Toothless is capable of and they go flying in the skies, she goes, "All right, I admit, this is really cool. It's amazing. He's amazing." In this version, Astrid is more like, "Okay, fine, you win." And I'm just like, you're so ungrateful. Like, Toothless, spin around and just dump her in the ocean. So despite me rolling my eyes at the things that people have criticized Nico Parker for when she was cast, I don't think she was very good. She's the only major weak point in this movie. And then another thing that I wasn't a huge fan of are some of the lines from the animated movie that come back into this film. The one line that really stuck out to me as being clunky is right before that flying sequence, when Toothless starts spinning and Hiccup goes, "And now the spinning. Thank you for nothing, you useless reptile." It works in the animated movie because the way Jay Baruchel delivers that line just fits perfectly. In this movie, it feels awkward. It feels forced. It's the equivalent of watching Suicide Squad and hearing Harley Quinn say "puddin'" for the first time. You're like, like, it's an iconic line, it's something that we all remember, but for some reason it just doesn't work in a live action setting. Despite all that, this is how you do a live action remake. Yes, it is shot for shot. Yes, there are hardly any surprises to be had, and I would have liked a little more to make this movie stand out from the original, but it's got some incredible sets, the cinematography is outstanding, the score is still incredible, the dragons look great, it keeps the themes from the original animated movie intact and doesn't disregard them, and all the actors are pretty good with the exception of Nico Parker. So I say it's worth seeing in your lifetime. This was a movie that I went into expecting not to like because I so love that original animated movie that I just didn't want to see the exact same movie from 15 years ago but with a new coat of paint. And while I technically did, it's still very well done, and I would say yes, this is the best live action remake of an animated movie, and certainly much better than Lilo and Stitch, which the more I think about that movie, the more I despise it. This one, the more I think about it, the more I go, yeah, that was really good. And there you go, those are my reviews for both Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I want to give a special thank you to my subscribers and YouTube members right over here. You guys are the reason why this channel continues to grow every day. And if you want to help to financially support the channel, you could do so via YouTube memberships for as little as $1.99 a month. But until next time, I want to know what you guys think about both Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon. Whatever your opinions are, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. If you want to find me elsewhere on the internet, you can find me on these social media platforms and my theme park and travel channel right here on YouTube. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.